Is this a new flower trend? Fabric on flowers? I mean, come on, it's beautiful. I don't know if it's a trend, but I'm loving it, so let's talk about how I did it. First off, I was approached by Duckadilly Fabrics to do this project, so I cannot claim that this was my idea. It was 100% their idea, and I loved it. And I was just so quick to just jump on board and be like, yes, let's figure this out together, because this idea is just genius. All of the fabrics that I'm using and all of the fabrics that you're gonna see today are from Duckadilly.com, and they are a supplier for Liberty brand fabric. They have hundreds of options of fabrics. Just make sure you have some time to go in there and peruse all their options and stack up that cart, because all of their fabrics are so beautiful. They're so thin and lightweight, and their fabric bonds beautifully to the felt. I've worked with a few different other fabrics that I tried to also bond, and I will say theirs bonded so much more better than just like the cheaper cotton blends that you're gonna get elsewhere. So definitely check them out, because they have so many fabric options and they're beautiful. And as you can see on all of these flowers, all of their prints work gorgeously on them. So let's chat a little bit about how to bond your fabric to your felt. So I have a whole nother video about how to do this. Check that out. That way you can see all the details, but really I'm just gonna go over it really briefly, and basically that you are literally just putting your felt down, you're ironing some Heat and Bond Ultra, and this is the fusible webbing. There's some other brands of it that I'm sure you can try, but I use the Heat and Bond Ultra. You wanna make sure that it is secured. It's not one of those, the lighter versions of the Heat and Bond that is just there for temporary so that you can sew on it, because these ones we are not sewing. So it needs to be the Ultra or the double-sided applique fusible webbing. So I used Heat and Bond, link below for the kind that I used. Just ironed on the Heat and Bond and then I fused on that fabric. Super easy process. Be sure to check out that other video on more details. Definitely watch to the end so that you can learn all the tips and tricks and all the mistakes I made with figuring out how to do this properly. Adding the fabric definitely made me have to rework a few of my processes and change the way I do things just a little bit on quite a few different methods so that I could make all of these flowers work. Also, while you're here, do me a favor and hit that like and subscribe button so that you're not missing any future videos. Let's start by chatting about how we cut all these flower petals. So I like to use a lot of Sizzix die cutting for my flower making, because it definitely gives you a clean cut every single time. I also use my Cricut Maker and my Silhouette Cameo occasionally as well. But for this project, I hand cut all my flower petals and I use my Sizzix die cutting. Also, stick around later and I will chat about how you can also cut these on your Cricut Maker or your Silhouette Cameo with all the digital downloads that I supply in my shop. So when using your die cuts, I noticed that the thinlet dies, the wafer thinlet dies, they did not work as well. So I just kind of stayed away from them and used all the designs that I have in my big steel ruled dies. Those worked beautifully. So normally when I run them through my machine, I can run about 6 sheets of felt through my machine. And when they were bonded with the fabric, I maxed out about 3 or 4 sheets. So because they are thicker, you're adding a layer of the Heat and Bond. While the Heat and Bond is extremely thin, it is still a layer, and then also your fabric on top. So it definitely makes everything a little bit thicker. Running it through the machine, you gotta do less layers. When I went to hand cut them, I actually found hand cutting for these so much easier. So once they're bonded with that fabric, it makes the felt and the fabric so much stiffer and easier to hold. And it just made hand cutting just a breeze. So I was able to put some freezer paper stencils on a few of my designs and go ahead and hand cut, and it made it just cut like butter with that fabric on it. It was a piece of cake. As you know, I have quite a few different flower options that I end up stiffening and curling. So things I learned about this. I was a little bit nervous on how these flower petals were gonna react to my hairspray or my fabric stiffener, and I didn't know if they were gonna curl the same. I was pleasantly surprised that it worked and I figured it out. So I did a few different tests on which side to spray, because normally I always spray the side that's getting curled. So if your petal is gonna get curled this way and your heat is going on it this way, then I always spray the side that is going to be in contact with the heat. For this project, however, on a few of the flower petals, I had fabric on this side, and that's where the heat was hitting. When I sprayed the fabric with the hairspray or the fabric stiffener, it did not really hold and give me the curl like I wanted to. All the felt fibers in the back didn't get any of that stiffening spray on the back, whereas if you're spraying onto felt, it goes straight through it, but there were too many barriers that it could not get through the fabric, the heat and bond, and then to the felt. So what I found what works best is I sprayed no matter what the felt side. And then, even though this side was sprayed and stiffened, once I got my heat tool on that fabric, it curled still beautifully and it held the heat all the way through. I did have to hold it a little bit longer, but it still worked beautifully. I want to attest that too to the heat and bond that was in the middle, because as the fusible is activated by heat, it basically kind of melted everything perfectly in the shape that I wanted to. So that heat and bond actually made curling way easier, and I was so pleasantly surprised that that happened, and it made curling and shaping all my petals a dream. When I curled with my curling iron, again, it curled beautifully. It held its shape wonderfully. I had no issues using my curling iron to shape any of my petals. When I used my hair straightener to just fold back some petals, it worked beautifully. I had no issues and it was amazing. So there was one problem that I did definitely run into, which was the gluing. I use my SureBonder glue gun and I absolutely love it, and I use their regular glue sticks, which I normally use all the time for all of my felt projects, and they work normally perfectly. But when I was bonding the fabric to the fabric, the glue definitely struggled to set a little bit, and it was definitely a little bit harder, and I had to hold pieces together significantly longer. Anytime I bonded fabric to felt with the glue, it worked just fine. I think all those fibers and the felt definitely grab onto that glue and then just grab onto whatever it's adhering to, and it works really, really great. But fabric to fabric, it's all nice and smooth, and it just treated it like that, and it almost just wanted to just not work as well as I wanted to, and it wanted to separate unless I sat there and held it for a very long time. SureBonder also makes a fabric glue stick. In the middle of the project, I probably should have switched over to the fabric glue stick, but because if it was a rush job, I did not have the time to really think through that process or even really cognitively think like, I should try a better method. So in the future, snag some of those fabric glue sticks and see if that works better for you. The regular glue sticks also worked just fine, so if that's what you have, use it, but try the fabric ones too if you can. This totally opens the idea to all these fun ideas about color combinations too. So when I went to do this project, I had the fabric and I picked a coordinating color that worked really well with it. But that being said, you could go really crazy and do mismatched colors. One of the flowers I did was a buttercup flower, and it was kind of half white, half yellow, and then I coordinated it with a really pretty gold color. So it looked really, really gorgeous all done. Another way to play with your flowers too is which direction the fabric goes on your petals. On that same buttercup flower, some of the petals had the fabric on the inside and some of them had the fabric on the outside. I did that with the stocky wildflower stem as well, where I switched it up so they weren't all exactly the same. So some of them had the fabric on the inside of the petals and some on the outside. I mainly focused on all the flowers to have the fabric on the outside because that's really what the showcase is, but it was nice to break up some of the flowers by reversing it as well. And that's another thing you need to think about when you're putting your flowers together is really which space should have the fabric. What is it going to be seen the most? What impact is it going to make the most? So on my open peony, I wrestled with that back and forth if I wanted it on the inside or the outside, and I ended up going with the inside because I felt like if you're looking at it straight on, that's what you're going to see the most. If you wanted to see it on the outside, you'd have to kind of like curl your head around the flower to see that. Be mindful about which side of the fabric you're going to put your fabric on for your petals. Another question I got asked about this project was what felt to use. So the acrylic based felt that you're going to get at craft stores won't work unfortunately for this project because it is acrylic based, and when you're adding the heat and bond, it definitely will melt and warp that felt. So I used all wool blend felt for this. Link below to snag all of your felt needs in my shop. So if you have any of my digital downloads already, or you want to go snag some below so that you can make all these flowers too. You can definitely still use your Cricut Maker or your Silhouette Cameo. I prefer the Cricut Maker 3 with the rotary blade because I think it definitely makes a better cut than the Silhouette Cameo, but either should work. You just have to be a little bit more patient with the Silhouette Cameo. Things to work through while you're doing it on your Cricut Maker. One, it does dull your blades a little bit quicker than normal, which is fine, just always have a backup blade. But also if you're just cutting a few flowers at a time, you shouldn't have any problems. I had that problem because I was cutting a lot of flowers. As far as settings that I used on my Cricut Maker, I used the felt setting and I used the more pressure. I tried a lot of the different felt settings that they have on there where it's like felt bonded, wool bonded, felt glitter bonded. I tried them all and I noticed the regular felt setting worked just fine as long as you put more pressure because you are going through more layers. So the more pressure just kind of went through all of it perfectly. And then also I made sure that I switched to the rotary blade because that just made all of the clean, nice, beautiful cuts on there. It is all totally doable, so be sure to check my links below to all my digital downloads. So if you want to make these beautiful flowers at home, you totally can. So I want you to keep in mind, those are the things that I did to make changes with curling, with glue. So you can really convert any of the flowers in my digital download library or in my library or anything that you've made at home, you really can convert them one for one very, very easily. There's just a few little caveats and I would just be sure to be more patient as you're working with it and kind of work through everything a little bit slower because it's gonna take you just a little bit longer to go through all of the different steps that you normally would go through much faster with just felt. I can't wait to see what you guys come up with because my brain is exploding with more and more ideas on what to do with felt covered fabric. Be sure to tag me on Instagram if you make anything, and I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. All right, here's that time to ask me any questions below and like and subscribe to this video because I am here to help. Love you guys.